I love it.
Good morning, everybody. Good that you love it. Yeah, actually, I lost a bet, and I said, okay, this is the last Meet Magento I speak this year, so I have to dress like this. Actually, we Bavarians love to dress like this, but not every time. So this definitely has nothing to do with the Oktoberfest, which took place a couple of weeks ago. So don't think I have not changed since that. So I already did. This is just because I, pay the lost bet. So I was supposed to run it from here, but it's fine if you guys run it from the back. I will talk today a little bit about our experience with migrating from Magento 1 to Magento 2. Especially when you're migrating bigger platforms, there might be some challenges and screw-ups, and I would love to share them with you. What would be, if you would be in a really perfect world, how would you, start a migration process? How would you go through that? And that would be, pretty easy. First of all, you would build kind of a plan, of course. Kind of a three-phase plan. We figured out we did that with a couple of other clients. So build, first of all, your strategy with your client together. Build a 3-year strategy, then rescope and descope. When you're migrating or when you're implementing a new platform project, it makes sense to look into details a little bit. Rescoping and descoping is a good approach for that. And of course, in an agile world, you go MVP. You try to set up a minimal viable product and optimize them by using out-of-the-box capabilities of your shop platform. It does not, or it's necessarily is not necessary to look into Magento. It can also be other platforms, but this is quite a common approach, I would say. So when we look a little bit deeper in that, if you want to build a 3-year digital strategy, what does that mean? First of all, you have to align with the merchant's business. So you have to understand the merchant business, and then you have to envision, align, and enable. So when you think about the vision, data-driven approaches like global benchmarking and stakeholder interviews and workshops are crucial to that. And also, aligning on growth KPIs and tactical strategies is absolutely crucial. And then, of course, you have to enable your client business, and that means scope and specification of the project. And finally, it makes absolutely sense to use data. Use a data-driven approach. Use mind data from your platform like Magento 1, Google Analytics. You can also use Magento BI on Magento 1, for example, to get data out from that and make smart decisions based from data. Second thing is rescope and descope. So don't just rebuild what you have in your platform. So that means do some, use the chance and use this opportunity to do some housekeeping. Over the years, you have put in probably a lot of functionalities and a lot of unnecessary components. So you do some housekeeping, use it, remove any unwanted extension, check against return on invest, what the business really needs. And again, descope redundant or problematic components. There might be a lot of components which you definitely do not need in that complexity. And also understand the roadmap of Magento. Understand the roadmap of the product, because if you see, okay, in the next release there might be some features I can use, leverage these upcoming features, and don't build these features in your MVP. And of course, based on that strategy, build your technical specification. And for that, to prioritize that, use Moscow. So that means must, should, could, and won't. So always try to prioritize on that way. With that approach, then you, build up your MVP and optimize that MVP with out-of-the-box capabilities of Magento. I mean, Magento 2 is a huge leap forward from Magento 1, and definitely has great features. I mean, you probably know all these kind of features, and especially the new features which are coming up with the page builder, for example, the staging capabilities, and so Elasticsearch and so on. So use these features out of the box to re-platform. And that would be, of course, if we would live in a perfect world, but actually this world is not at all perfect. So it's unfortunately not at all perfect. That's the reason why I stand here in that kind of dress. So if you're oh, I like it, by the way. So if we're looking to client migrations, you have a lot of challenges. And if you have a client, for example, having a platform running on Magento for years, then these challenges getting bigger and bigger. And what does that mean? What kind of challenges they have? So we have a client, or we looked into a project, a migration project with a client, with a grown system over approximately 6 years. Started with Magento 1.6, moved to Enterprise 1.14 in the end. So with a huge set of data, a huge database, like 30 gigabyte zip data. So that's a really big challenge. Also, kind of the catalog was kind of the structure of the catalog was a mess, because over the years and internationalization plans, the structure of the catalog, I mean, it was not really handleable or doable for the editors. So they lost a lot of time in editoring the catalog and the products. And also, I mean, a lot of integrations took place in the project. So like ERP, for example, product information management, order management, and so on. And also what they had an omni-channel loyalty program which was integrated. So the client has a couple of hundred stores, and they wanted to have the omni-channel loyalty integrated into that. So also when you talk about these kind of bigger companies and these bigger systems, you have lots of stakeholders involved with different agendas. So also the management of these stakeholders is not that really easy. And of course, if your business is, I mean, the e-commerce business is a serious part of your business in total, then you need really sophisticated release management for that. So the client we are talking about is Hallhuber. It's a German woman fashion brand. It's available in 7 countries across Europe. And just some numbers about Hallhuber, so you can a little bit more imagine what they're up to. So they are doing right now 200 million in revenue in total, euro. And more than 20% of the revenue already is online. They have around about 2,000 employees and a little bit more than 400 stores in physical stores in 7 countries. So let's talk about some data and statistics of the project. So as you can imagine, migrating a project in this size with that importance for the client business is not so easy, and a minimal viable product approach is nice, but absolutely no option for them, because they really need a lot of functionality already in the platform from the right away, from the beginning. They don't want to lose clients. They are expecting a really great experience with a lot of functionality. So it's not really an approach what you can choose for that. So I give you some numbers around the development of the project. So in the main time, up to 13 developers worked on the platform. In total, 27 persons from our company were involved. The project duration was 14 months. From the very beginning, from the first conversations we had with the client, including the first workshops, until the release of the new platform. We worked in terms of development and conceptual work and also design work, more than 12,000 hours on the project. And that resulted in the end in 22 Hallhuber only extensions, so extensions we built for the client with a specific client-related features, and 33 vendor extensions that were extensions from Tactivision, but also extensions we used from the marketplace or from the ecosystem. in terms of conceptual work, even we had to build a really big platform without using an MVP approach. We tried to be as agile as possible. So we used agile approaches, and for that, of course, we have written a lot of user stories, 880 in total, without subtasks. And if you would print that out, it would be like 2,480 letter pages of requirement without any pictures or diagrams, so only text. So that's a lot. So if you look into the biggest parts where we spent the most time, that's also quite interesting, because you see here a chart where we spent how much time in some areas. And the big blue part, which is 20%, it's the TradeByte 1, that's their ERP and order management system interface. So it's 20% of all the work we have done was on the back-end integration of their ERP and order management. Then also quite interesting is the red one on the right and the green one, because these are together the project management and agile approaches. So that means we spend 11% of all the time for classical project management, and 9%, and 11% for agile approaches. So that means all the meetings like sprint planning, grooming, review, and retro meetings. So in total 20%, which I think is a really good amount. So it's really decent for this size of projects. And then the three biggest features also here with 9%, 9%, and 8%, so which is on the one hand the gift card, then the complete customized checkout and account area, and also the Hallhuber card. I come to that in a bit. So managing this kind of project is super hard, because the estimations, they were all wrong in the beginning completely. We learned in that project that the only really serious KPI you can rely in terms of project management is the burn down chart. The burn down chart was the only chart which was I would say in the middle of the project, starting to being right, and showed us the right time frame when we are able to go live. Because we started in February 2017 with the conceptual work, and of course, the burn down goes up because we wrote user stories. We also, started implementation, but it just goes up because we wrote more user stories that we can deliver in the development. So in July, August, we hit the tipping point. So, and from this time on, we really could see the burn down is going down, and that was the only reliable chart we had during the complete project. So it showed us we are going down. If you follow the blue line, it shows us we are able to deliver the platform mid-end of February, and that was exactly the date when we went live. So in October, we already could see from the forecasting of the burn down that we are not going to be live before February 2018. So I have here some quite nice video. I think I show you a little bit of that, and that is the oh, sorry. Let's check again. This is the complete project time, so it starts in March 2017, and you see the Git pushes of the complete team. On the left area, you see all the back-end code, which was pushed into the repository. On the right hand, the front end, and you see all the peoples involved, and also you see on which areas they were working, for example, the Hallhuber card, the TradeByte, back-end integrations, and so on. So that's quite interesting. We did there were a couple of 100,000 commits during the project time. There might be also a lot of interesting numbers you can ask me afterwards. So let's jump just into the migration requirements. So we had a couple of requirements we had to fulfill, and one part was data migration. That was really, I would say, somehow a little bit ridiculous, because they wanted to have migrated all data, not just products and customer data, but really all data, including log files. So they really want to have all the old data from Magento 1 and Magento 2. And that was a really big challenge, because the migration migration tool is great, but it needs a lot of adjustments to do that. And it's not that easy, especially when you want to do a migration with a really small amount of downtime. So that was one thing. Feature migration, that was one of the hardest thing because, as I said in the beginning, we were not able to deliver or go an MVP approach. We had to migrate all the features without looking into the code. So you might ask, why is that? I mean, it's an open source platform, yes, but if you have a shitty contract with your SI before and you're not able to look into the code because of, intellectual property reasons, then it looks like that. So what we had to do, we had to reverse engineer from the front end. So we had to look into the front end features and assume how it was done in the back end. So that cost a lot of time. And I only can give merchants advice, look into your contracts so that you have the intellectual property on the code the agency is building for you. Because it gives you pain and headache in the end if you have to migrate that later on. So then, of course, developing new features. You don't want to, if you're a brand like Hallhuber and you want to bring experience to your clients, you also, when you do a replatforming, you want to deliver new features. So that was also a part. And of course, data optimization, product structure, as I said, the categories and the product was a mess. We had to reorganize that also in the product information management system, and we had to reorganize the interface for that as well. So migration strategy, as I said, requirements re-engineering, that was one part. Then classical requirements engineering of customer requirements. And what was a really big point for us was that we could be able to reach the final database scheme at the most early point in time during the project. And that was with release 0.6. The final or the last release before go live was 0.14. Why is that? Because we wanted to test against, doing continuously testing with a live or almost live data environment. And so that was really important. So from this point of time, and that was August in 27, so almost in the middle of the project when we hit that part, we were able to do nightly migration of data, and we were able to test, and the business units at Hallhuber were able to test with almost live data. So of course, they tested with all different departments there all the time. And another point was because they want to do the editorial maintenance already on the new system, so we had to migrate them as well. For the migration, technically, we used kind of an intermediate database, and that looks like the following. So we had our M1. We pushed the data from M1 through the Magento data migration tool into a migration database where we are holding all the entities. And then there was a second database, Magento 2 database, the production database. Oh, that's blank. Here we go. And what we have done, we imported the data from their external systems, like their ERP system or the editors. They're pushing the data into the production database, and then we did some, or we implemented kind of a cherry picking tool. And what that did, cherry pick some entities and some data from the entities and mix it up with the production database data and the external data from the third-party systems. So that was kind of a good approach, and the good thing here was we were able to do the data migration with less than 3 hours of downtime. And we are talking about more than 30 gigabytes zipped data, what we had to migrate. So, and this approach made it possible that we almost had no downtime, so really, really little downtime. So that was quite interesting because that's a ticket from our Jira. And that is the ticket 401, and this is the ticket for the going live, with all the test scenarios, what has to be fixed or what has to be working at which point of time. So that was a process which took like 5 hours for the going live with all these checks. And there were some point of no returns inside. So when we hit or we overhit that point, we were not really able to go back. I mean, we would be, but it would be quite hard for us. Okay, so that was that. Feature highlights. Let's talk just a couple of seconds about feature highlights, what was implemented. One of the biggest feature highlights, I think, is the Magento 2 import framework we built for that with a pipeline. And the pipeline pattern we implemented is quite interesting because we have different pipelines, and pipelines means that we have different processes, synchronous or asynchronous, and you can manage them through a pipeline pattern, and you see in the back end which pipeline is running, and it's not like cron, so you have really dependencies between steps of your processes, and you make them visible, and if something goes wrong, it shows you where you can re-enter the pipeline, restart the pipeline again. So this is a quite good approach if you have complex integrations to manage them and make them visible. Another part was going into cloud. Hallhuber used a dedicated hosting environment before. We were asked to bring the platform into the cloud. You might ask why we have not used Magento Cloud for that, because when we started the project, Magento Cloud was not really available in a decent state, so we decided to go directly with our own setup on AWS. So we are using AWS for that with an auto-scaling environment. I mean, I guess most of the people know how that can be set up and works. So that was a big leap forward. And also the customer loyalty, the seamless customer loyalty was a big implementation because, as I said, they have omni-channel. So that means they have click and collect also in their shop. They have these omni-channel loyalty program where you have your customer Hallhuber card, and with that card you see or you can collect points online and offline, and you can also see what you bought offline. You can see that online in your account. And also the gift card, you have to make sure that if you have a gift card, you cannot use that online and offline at the same time. So if you're standing on the cash desk in a store, you're not able to, push the checkout button on your smartphone and going to the cash desk and hand over the gift card. So that should not be possible at all, of course. So you have to make sure that it's completely synced in real time with all the stores and the online shop. So that was a big challenge. So yeah, and this is finally how it looks like. We completely implemented a front end from the scratch, so that does not have to do anything with the Luma theme. So it's completely built up from scratch, also the checkout. And yeah, I think it was quite a challenging project, but in the end we were able to deliver this year in February, and we see a lot of uplifts in the necessary or the most reasonable KPIs. So we are quite happy with that. And yeah, if you have any questions, then just let me know. I will be around today and tomorrow also. Probably you have to look because I will change the clothes because it's a little bit warm. So I will change that later. So I might look a little bit different, but yeah, just approach me if you have any questions. And yeah, have a good stay here. Thank you.
Wonderful. So I want to make sure that everybody gets out to the networking break, get out a chance to meet our sponsors and the people that are exhibiting here. But I do want to open it up for a minute for questions if you have some for Stefan. And I've got a microphone so you don't have to shout if anyone wants to be heard. Here we go. All right.
By the way, is there, or somebody can make a picture of that because I have to prove I did it.
Oh,
it's already been okay, cool. That's good. Thanks, man.
Do you know about what percentage of those hours that you showed was between front end and back end work?
Yeah, it was around about 75% was back end and 25 was around about front end. Yeah.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Hi, nice speech.
Thanks.
From business perspective, was it a fixed price project or fully agile?
I would say both of it. So there were agile also from a contracting perspective positions in it, but as you can imagine, I mean, we started the project also on an early stage with Magento, so we saw a couple of serious problems with Magento itself, and there were also parts of the hours we had to take over on our behalf, but in general it was an agile approach, so that means it was time and material, but I think it was like, you know, a couple of 100 hours at least we took over on our behalf, fixing some bugs, and we also involved professional services from Magento to help us with some issues we faced with Magento in the core. So yeah, I think in this project size it's quite normal that you cannot, you know, bill everything to your client, so you have to take someone on your behalf also.
You had a slide up with the total number of hours that went by kind of quickly. Can you remind us how many hours was that? And then the question is, you mentioned there were some extenuating circumstances, like you didn't have access to source code. Do you have any sense as to how much shorter, how many fewer hours you would have used if you had had access to that source code?
I didn't get the first question, but I answered the second question first, okay? Second question, it's hard to estimate. I mean, we were able to look into the back end of Magento 1, and we were able, you know, to see features in the front end. I guess it would cut down the project 15 to 20% if we would have been able to look into the code. Because, I mean, we would not have, you know, take over the code from M1 to M2, but it would have made it much more easier to understand processes, because, I mean, the platform was running for 6 years, and it was running. I mean, it was not completely screwed up, so it was stable running, and I pretty much assume that we could have been able to understand processes and implementations much faster than we did in this way. So I would assume 15 to 20% it would have been easier from that perspective, and now you can ask the first question.
Yeah, the first question was simply, what was the total number of hours on the project?
The total number of hours was 12,206, yeah, so that was the total. There was also, you know, design and conceptual work included in that. I think from a development perspective, it was like 9,000, like something like that, or 8,500, 9,000. I can look it up if you want to have the exact number.